Yo, what's up, guys? You believe this hockey team? Second night of a back-to-back, flying in late to Minnesota, and the Leafs find a way to beat the Minnesota Wild in Minnesota 4-2, guys. An incredible turn of events have happened tonight for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Winning 3 points out of 4 against Buffalo and Minnesota. When the Leafs are trying to bloody tank, it's just so Toronto Maple Leafs, guys. Now, obviously, as a Leaf fan, obviously the main concern for this Toronto Maple Leafs team is getting a top 5 pick, due to the fact of the trade with the Bruins last year. Obviously, we all know the whole situation, of course, but to see the Leafs win tonight, it's just not beneficial for them. I never want the Maple Leafs to lose hockey games, guys, but when losing benefits your franchise, that is what you want. And tonight, this hockey team here, once again, goes and puts in a ballsy performance and finds a way to beat Minnesota in regulation to get 2 bloody points tonight, with one really solid period in the second, guys. The first and third period, obviously, Minnesota were the better team, guys, in this hockey. The Leafs had very few chances in the first period. The best chance I felt in the first period for the Maple Leafs was Jacob Cullen making that that backhanded pass there to Calle Yarncroc, who was robbed there by Wolstad. Other than that, Leafs had a couple shots on net there, but nothing really threatening the Minnesota Wild. Anthony Stolarz, though, my God, he was absolutely immense tonight. Can somebody like Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Wall know we're not in Game 10 anymore, or Game 15? These two are playing out of their mind the last 2 nights. Wall plays incredible last night. Stolarz plays incredible tonight, making 36 saves on 38 shots. I'm thinking, holy crap, man. It's like, why are we getting this amazing goaltending now when we're trying to lose bloody games? And then you get guys like Bo Gruel, who gets his first career 2-goal game. This kid here, he's looking like a player. Obviously, he's leading scorer for the Marlies, guys. 27 goals with the Marlies, scoring 2 really nice goals in the second period, guys. After Matias Michelli had made a great pass to Morgan Riley to start the scoring for the Leafs with a really nice pass there. Minnesota turned the puck over. Michelli gets the nice pass there to Riley to make it 1-0 with a really nice shot. And I'm saying to myself, is this hockey team for real? After Minnesota was applying pressure nonstop, they had hit a post at one point. The Leafs just find a way to get a goal, make it 1-0. And then, like I mentioned, the 2 goals by Gruel where Minnesota turned the puck over again in their own end. Robertson gets the puck, passes it to Stetcher, who's playing tonight for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, because Oliver Ekman-Larsson's wife is expecting a child. Of course, so congrats to the family there. But Stetcher gets the shot off. Gruel gets the tip there to make it 2-0 for the Leafs. And I'm saying to myself, my God, they're actually not playing half bad. They weren't horrible. They weren't amazing, but they were forechecking, getting some chances on that. Outshot Minnesota 16-11 in the second period. And then after Gruel gets his second goal of the game, this guy here, he's showing some really, really nice flashes here. Really nice shot on the third goal that he scored there, off another turnover by Minnesota. Minnesota was really turning the puck over a lot in their own end tonight. It was really flat in this second period. And the Leafs were doing some good things. They were forechecking, had some really good chances on edge, had some good shots from Michelli's line with Tavares and Nylander. You had some good shots from the third line with Roberts and Joshua and Gruel, like I mentioned there. So there was some decent shits in this game by certain guys. The second period was obviously the best period for the Maple Leafs, guys, taking a 3-0 lead. And I'm saying to myself, this team's really going to screw themselves, aren't they? Because everybody called them a bunch of pussies for not standing up for their captain, questioning their integrity. Berube obviously ripping them a new one in the second intermission against Anaheim, of course. So I just said to myself, this is typical Maple Leafs, just playing this way right now, playing hard. Listen, I like seeing them playing hard, fighting, getting involved in scrums like I saw Brandon Carlo get involved with Zuccarello, That's nice to see and everything, but it's the wrong time of year to be doing it, of course. obviously, we would have wanted this happening before all the other games before tonight, of course, but unfortunately, that isn't the case. The Leafs were in the position that they're in, up 3-0. Minnesota kept on pushing. Minnesota was obviously the way better team in the third period because you just knew. Once Simone Benoit turned that puck over, Minnesota was able to retrieve the puck. Tarasenko's wide open there to make it 3-1. You just knew sooner or later that the Maple Leafs were going to make some stupid decisions defensively. Of course, we saw that one with Benoit. Of course, And Morgan Riley, who actually was not having a horrendous game, had the goal, made some pretty good defensive plays. But listen, guys, if you've been watching my channel, when Morgan Riley does something good, Morgan Riley's going to do something dumb as well in a hockey game, And on that second goal, Morgan Riley just decides, you know what, I'm going to screen Stoli on this shot here. Gets right in front of Stolarz. Tarasenko takes the shot, beats Stolarz, doesn't even know that the puck passed him, and cuts the deficit down to 3-2. I guess Morgan Riley forgot that he was wearing white for that moment instead of green. So, benefit there. That the Leafs were up 3-0 there. It would have been really bad, of course, to give up 2 goals in like 20 seconds, and blowing the lead like that. Obviously would have been great, of course, for obviously the draft stock purposes. But, obviously for the team there itself, they're obviously not trying to lose every game. Of course, that would have been another moment where you say to yourself, well, that's why you're not in the playoffs, of course, because of moments like that, obviously. And it still stands why they're not in the playoffs, because of those things that they did on the first and second goal that Minnesota scored. So, obviously, you had Minnesota capitalize on the 2 mistakes there. You cut it down to 3-2, and then Minnesota just kept on pushing and pushing. You knew they were going to dominate the third period. Try to get that tying goal. They had a power play off a stupid penalty from Nick Robertson. Leafs were able to kill off that. Obviously, the Leafs have a great penalty kill this year. Minnesota just had a lot of shots on that. I think they had over 17 shots. They had 15, 16, 17 shots around that range there, guys. Leafs only had 5 in the third period there. Minnesota was shooting them like crazy, but Anthony Stolarz with an incredible save on Matt Zuccarello. That was the grade A save of the game, guys. And then Joshua comes right back down the ice and hits the post. That could have been the insurance goal right there to make it 4-2. Wasn't the case there. Nyes was able to outskate Quinn Hughes, surprisingly enough, get the empty net goal. And the Leafs, man, they battled resiliently in that third, hemmed in their own den majority of the third period, and they squeak away with 2 points, 3 points out of 4 against Minnesota and Buffalo. Something that we would have thought a week and a half ago was going to be like Death Valley, that the Leafs are going to get their asses handed to them in these 2 games, and they come away with 3 or 4 points, guys. But listen, at the end of the day, it's not what us Leaf fans want, and the Leafs have really screwed themselves with winning this game. They are now out of the bottom 10. Now they are 21st now. It's like they have really done themselves a disservice, obviously, to fans like myself who want to get the top 5 pick back after the horrendous trade that Brad Treliving made. Now, obviously, you're in the 21st position now. These guys are going to try to battle it out the rest of the year because, like I mentioned, with them getting questioned and everything else, if these guys here want to play hard like this and Boston gets, say, the 15th overall pick, that's not as bad as, getting a top 5 pick or, a top 6 pick, 7th or 8th overall. If you can get it into the middle of the pack, that's not bad at all. But obviously, I would prefer the Leafs to tank all the way down to the bottom 5, get a top 5 pick and benefit this hockey team, of course, but it wouldn't hurt them as badly if they were able to stay in the middle of the pack and Boston gets a middle of the order pick there. But at the end of the day, guys, it's like we're caught in between here. You want them to lose, but now they're in a 21st position here. What do? It seems highly unlikely that this team here is going to find themselves in the bottom 5 unless, Winnipeg continues to win like they are. St. Louis, if they continue to win. The Rangers beat Minnesota last night after Minnesota got goalie tonight by Stolarz. They got goalie last night as well by Igor Shesterkin, who made 46 saves, outshooting the Rangers 21-1 in the third period last night. It happens to them again tonight with Stolarz and that. Minnesota, back-to-back losses for them. Obviously, that's not good for them, of course, And the Leafs doing what they did tonight, getting themselves out of the bottom 10, of course. But you had some decent performances tonight, but how about Jake McCabe, though? This guy played 26 minutes again tonight. Had 9 blocked shots, guys. 9. Leads the league in blocked shots, With Chris Tanev obviously not in the lineup, Jake McCabe has really taken that mantle and lead the team in blocked shots. Man, he was battling tonight. Took some shots on the ribs, the legs, Give Jake McCabe some credit tonight. He has been spectacular this weekend, last night and tonight against Buffalo and Minnesota, guys. He was immense. Carlo played 25 minutes tonight. He logged a lot of minutes tonight as well, So those guys there I felt were really solid tonight. Michelli's been playing some great hockey as of late. Of course, we've seen how he's been since the post-Olympic break. Wall and Stolarz have been solid the last 2 games in a row, of course. You got some decent performances by Gruel as of late. You know, I really like what this kid's bringing to the table. You know, his dad's obviously a former coach, of course, so this guy here has some IQ, some really good hockey intangibles that he brings to the table for the Leafs. You know, played 17 minutes again tonight, so he's playing some solid minutes, getting some goals, 3 goals, guys, you know, in his last 4 games. That's great to see as well for the kid, but, you know, obviously right now we don't want them to be getting hot right now, but listen, guys, the way the season has gone, it has been a very frustrating season. This Maple Leafs team just adds another layer to it, winning two games, winning 3 out of 4 points in Buffalo, Minnesota. Now you got to play the Islanders now on Tuesday night. We'll see how they do then. Maybe Stolarz gets to start in that game because Wall played the last 3. So maybe Berube awards Stolarz with the start on Tuesday. Obviously, they're off tomorrow night, so we'll see what happens Tuesday, guys. But obviously, it doesn't benefit the Leafs that they won this game. You know, Minnesota's a great team, and the Leafs were able to find a way to win this game tonight. It seemed a lot of times in this game tonight reminded me of a little bit of last year where the goalie was winning them the game. The Leafs would just play defensive hockey, just get the puck out, you know, rely on your goaltender, get the empty net goal, and find a way to win a game. You know, we saw that a lot last year. Obviously, the Leafs' record on the road, it's not great this year. Leafs have a road win for the first time since like the beginning of bloody February. So that's obviously a positive as well. Obviously, there's some positives in this game. Obviously, I don't want to be too negative, but at the end of the day, my priority is to get a top 5 pick, maybe draft a top quality defenseman there, like a Verhoff or a Reed. But, you know, obviously, guys, there's still like 14 games left to go. Long way to go still. The Leafs could go on a losing skid. Who knows? But the way things are going right now, everybody's winning right now on the bottom there. Like I mentioned, St. Louis, Winnipeg, the Rangers. Those teams are winning right now. You know, you're getting some good production from some younger guys like Gruel and Cowan. You know, you're getting some good performances from veterans like McCabe and Michelli, of course. So you got some decent performances there, guys. You know, Stetcher played tonight, like I mentioned, for OEL, of course. So decent game tonight. Good win for the Leafs. You know, they battled valiantly, you know, found a way to get the win tonight. We'll see how they do against the Islanders. Will they get 2 points then? We'll have to wait and see, guys, of course, you know. But Leafs find a way to win tonight. Get 3 out of 4 points against Minnesota and Buffalo, you know. Second night of a back-to-back, like I mentioned, you know, on short rest as well. This hockey team finds a way to win the bloody hockey game, guys. Something that just doesn't amaze me with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Anything can happen with this bloody franchise, guys. But we'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this game tonight, guys. So if you like this video, subscribe if you guys want to see more content. Go Leafs, go as always, guys. See you guys on the next episode of Leafs Unfiltered. Ciao, guys.